Let me ask you something. And I want you to really think about this before you answer. How many days have you woken up, looked at yourself in the mirror, and felt like something was missing? Not in a dramatic way. Not in a crisis. Just this quiet, nagging feeling that you are capable of more than what your life currently shows. That feeling has a name. Most people never find out what it is. They spend years, sometimes entire lifetimes, moving through the world with that feeling sitting in their chest like a stone they cannot name and cannot put down. But here is the truth. That feeling is not weakness. That feeling is not failure. That feeling is your potential knocking on a door you have been too afraid to open. And the only thing standing between the life you have right now and the life you know you are capable of living is one habit. Just one. The habit of keeping the promise you make to yourself. That is the whole lesson. Everything I am about to tell you circles back to that one idea. Because the relationship you have with yourself, the way you treat your own word, your own commitments, your own quiet declarations made in private moments, that relationship determines everything. It determines your confidence. It determines your character. It determines the ceiling of everything you will ever build. Most people spend their entire lives searching for the secret. They read books, they watch videos, they look for the formula. And the formula was always right there. It was never about discipline in the way people talk about it. It was never about motivation. It was about something far simpler and far deeper. It was about whether you trust yourself. Think about it. When you make a promise to someone else, an appointment, a deadline, an agreement, you feel a certain weight. You feel accountability. You show up. You follow through. Not because you always want to, but because you know there are consequences. Someone is watching. Someone is counting on you. But when you make a promise to yourself, something different happens. You negotiate. You rationalize. You say, tomorrow. You say, I'll start Monday. You say, one more day won't hurt. And then Monday comes and becomes Tuesday. And Tuesday becomes next month. And somewhere along the way, without ever meaning to, you taught yourself that your own word means nothing. And that is where the problem begins. There was a young man I once heard about. Bright young man. Full of ideas. He had a vision for his life that was clear and beautiful in his mind. He talked about it with his friends. He talked about it with his family. He had plans written in notebooks, goals listed on paper, dreams mapped out in careful detail. Every January he would start again. New year, new resolve, new energy. By February the energy would fade. By March the notebook would be buried under other things. By April he would tell himself he just needed to find the right system, the right motivation, the right time. He spent 12 years doing this. 12 years. And one evening he sat down with an older man, a quiet man who had built a simple but deeply meaningful life, and he laid everything out. All his plans. All his frustration. All his confusion about why nothing ever seemed to change. The older man listened. And when the young man finished, he asked just one question. He said, when you tell yourself you will do something, do you do it? The young man went quiet. And in that silence, the answer was perfectly clear. He had never connected those two things. His failed goals and his broken self-promises. He thought his problem was his plan. But the problem was never the plan. The problem was that he had slowly, over years, taught himself not to believe himself. You see, every time you break a promise to yourself, something happens beneath the surface. Something invisible but real. Your self-image shifts. Not dramatically. Just slightly. Like a door that drifts open half an inch at a time. And you adjust. You lower your expectations just a little. You tell yourself you are someone who tries but never quite finishes. You tell yourself you are someone who wants it but maybe not enough. You build an identity out of your patterns. Not out of your potential. Out of your patterns. And once that identity is built, Once you believe at a deep level that you are just not the kind of person who follows through, everything becomes harder. Because now you are not just fighting laziness. You are fighting who you believe you are. And that is a much harder battle. Now understand this. This is not about being hard on yourself. That is not what I am saying. Self-criticism is not the answer here. Self-criticism is actually part of the problem. When most people break a promise to themselves, they do not quietly recommit. They attack themselves. They call themselves lazy, weak, undisciplined. And then, to escape that feeling of shame, they stop thinking about the goal altogether. They close the notebook. They change the subject. They distract themselves. And nothing changes. The answer is not more self-punishment. The answer is more self-respect. The answer is deciding that your word to yourself matters. That you are worth keeping your own promises. There was a woman I think about often. She was in her mid-40s, raising 3 children, working a job that paid the bills but never lit her up inside. She had a dream she had carried since she was young, something she had always wanted to build, a small business, a creative project, something entirely her own. But life had happened. Children happened. Responsibilities happened. And every time she thought about that dream, there was a small voice that said, "It is too late now. You missed your window. Be realistic." So she listened to that voice. She called it wisdom. She called it maturity. But it was not wisdom. It was fear that had learned to speak in a calm and reasonable tone. One day she decided to make one promise to herself. Not a big promise. Not a dramatic overhaul of her life. Just one small commitment. She would spend 30 minutes every morning, before the house woke up, working on the thing she cared about. Just 30 minutes. That was it. She told no one. She made no announcements. She just kept that one promise, every single day, quietly. 18 months later her life looked different. Not because of 30 minutes a day, but because of what those 30 minutes did to how she saw herself. She became someone who showed up for herself. She became someone who trusted herself. She became someone who kept her word. And from that foundation, everything else was possible. That is the power of the single habit. Not the task itself. The identity it builds. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you are casting a vote for who you are. Every time you follow through on a small commitment, you are telling your own mind, "I am someone who does what I say. I am someone who can be trusted. I am someone who keeps their word." And your mind responds. Your confidence grows. Not because of motivation. Not because of inspiration. But because of evidence. Real evidence, created by your own hands, your own choices, your own kept commitments. Think about it this way. Most people wait for confidence before they act. They say, "Once I feel ready, once I feel sure, once I feel motivated, then I will begin." But they have it backwards. Confidence does not come before the action. Confidence comes from the action. You do not feel your way into doing. You do your way into feeling. Every small kept promise is a deposit into your belief in yourself. And that belief, built slowly over weeks and months, becomes the foundation that holds everything else. Let me ask you something honestly. When you look at the people in your life who seem to have things figured out, the ones who move with purpose, who build quietly and consistently, who seem to have a kind of calm certainty about them, what do you think their secret is? Most people assume it is talent, or opportunity, or luck. But if you get close enough, if you watch carefully enough, you will find the same thing every time. They do what they say they are going to do. Not perfectly. Not dramatically. Just consistently. They make the promise and they keep it. They show up when they do not feel like it. They do the small thing when the grand gesture feels too far away. And over time, those small kept promises build something magnificent. There was a businessman I knew of who started with almost nothing. No connections, no money, no education that anyone would be impressed by. But he had one unusual quality. When he told himself he would make a call, he made the call. When he told himself he would arrive at a certain time, he arrived. When he told himself he would study something for an hour, he studied it for an hour. People around him thought he was disciplined. But he used a different word. He called it self-respect. He said, "I cannot ask other people to trust me if I do not trust myself. I cannot build something real in the world if I cannot build something real in my private moments." And that philosophy, lived out in thousands of small daily promises kept, built him something no one could take away. Not a business. A character. A self. A reputation that lived inside him before it ever lived in the world. Ask yourself this. What would happen to your life if you made one small promise to yourself today and kept it for 30 days straight? Not a big promise. Not a life-changing resolution. Just one small thing. Something that takes 15 minutes, or 30 minutes, or even 10. Something that moves you in the direction of who you want to become. What would happen? Not to your results. Not to your goals. But to you. To how you see yourself. To how you carry yourself. To the quiet confidence that grows when you know you have kept your word. Here's what I have come to understand about human beings. We are not primarily shaped by our circumstances. We are shaped by our habits of thought and action. And our habits of thought and action are built one small decision at a time. You did not become who you are overnight. You became who you are through thousands of small daily choices, most of which you made without even realizing you were making them. The patterns formed themselves. The identity was built quietly, invisibly, over time. And here is the beautiful and terrifying truth of that. It means you can build a different one. It means the same process that created the version of you that breaks promises to yourself can be reversed, slowly, steadily, through the same quiet daily mechanism. One kept promise. Then another. Then another. Until the new pattern becomes the new identity. Until you look up one day and realize that you have become the kind of person who follows through. And you will not be able to pinpoint the moment it happened. Because it did not happen in a moment. It happened in thousands of moments. Small. Quiet. Private. Real. There is a man I think about who had a drinking problem for years. Not the dramatic kind of story most people tell. Just a quiet, daily problem that was slowly costing him everything. His marriage was fraying. His work was slipping. His relationship with his children had this distance in it he could not close. He had tried to quit many times. He had made announcements. He had made promises to his wife. He had made promises to himself. And he had broken all of them. One day his youngest daughter, she was about 7 years old, asked him to wake up early with her on a Saturday and watch the sunrise. He said he would. That morning, he woke up. He could have stayed in bed. He felt no particular motivation. He felt tired and a little ashamed and completely ordinary. But he had made a promise. To her, yes. But in keeping it, he also kept it to himself. They sat on the front steps together and watched the sky change color. And something shifted in him. Not dramatically. But really. He realized that the feeling of keeping a small promise was different from the feeling of breaking one. That it left something behind. Something worth protecting. He started small. He stopped lying to himself in the small moments. He stopped letting himself off the hook in the private hours. And slowly, over time, his life changed. Not because of one sunrise, but because of what the sunrise reminded him. That he was capable of showing up. That his word could mean something. That the man he wanted to be was not some distant, impossible figure. He was just a man who kept his small private promises, one at a time. You see, transformation is never the result of one enormous decision. It is the result of countless small decisions, made in the quiet moments when no one is watching and nothing is forcing you. The real test of character has never been the big public moments. The real test has always been the small private ones. What do you do when there is no audience? What do you do when no one will know the difference? What do you do when breaking the promise costs you nothing in the eyes of the world? Those moments, those invisible ordinary private moments, are the ones that build your life. Most people never realize that the life they are living right now is the sum of the private moments they stopped paying attention to. The promises they made and then quietly let dissolve. The commitments they treated as optional. The habits they told themselves they would start and then did not. And the truth is, no one punished them. No alarm went off. No one came to hold them accountable. The cost was paid in something slower and quieter. In a creeping sense that they cannot fully trust themselves. In a background noise of low confidence that no amount of success in other areas can seem to silence. In the feeling that no matter what they build in the world, something in their inner life feels slightly unsteady. That unsteadiness has a source. And the source is the gap between what you tell yourself you will do and what you actually do. That gap is the most important measurement in your life. More important than your bank account. More important than your title or your reputation. More important than any external measure anyone has ever placed on you. Because the size of that gap determines the quality of your relationship with yourself. And the quality of your relationship with yourself determines everything. So here's what I want to leave you with. Not a system. Not a strategy. Not a morning routine or a productivity framework. Something deeper than that. Something older. I want you to decide, today, right now, in this quiet moment, that your word to yourself matters. That the promises you make in private are just as sacred as the ones you make to the people you love. That the version of you who shows up for yourself in the invisible hours is the version that builds the life. Start with one promise. Make it small. Make it manageable. Something you can actually do. And then do it. Not because someone is watching. Not because there are consequences. But because you have decided that you are worth keeping your own word. And then do it again tomorrow. And the day after that. And watch what happens, not to your goals, not to your results, but to you. To how you see yourself. To the quiet confidence that begins to grow where the old doubt used to live. To the way you carry yourself when you know, deep down, that you are someone who shows up. There is a version of you still waiting. Waiting for the right time. Waiting for the right motivation. Waiting for someone or something to make it easier. And there is a version of you that has already decided. That does not wait for perfect. That starts with small. That keeps the small promise, and then another, and builds something real and lasting from the inside out. One version keeps living the same year over and over, wondering why things never change. The other version looks back 5 years from now and barely recognizes the life they used to accept as inevitable. The habit is not complicated. It is not glamorous. It will not trend on any platform or impress anyone at a dinner party. It is simply this. Keep the promise you made to yourself. The small one. The one no one else even knows about. Keep it today. And then tomorrow. And watch who you become. That is the only transformation that has ever been real. The one that happens quietly. In private. One kept word at a time.